Hi, good morning. My name is Machen Welke, and my company is CMIT Solution in Silicon Valley. And what we do is that two things. One is that we are a IT company that support the small, mid-sized businesses in the Silicon Valley area and California. The second thing is that we help the larger corporation with the procurement of their hardware, software, and in the last year has been helping them with cybersecurity for their supplier or their subcontractors. My background is in uh, software engineering, so I've spent a lot of time building software in the valley before we started our company, and had a lot of experience in building software and dealing with security issue, especially if it's for government to federal to use. So um, our office is in San Jose, about 3 hours from here. So I'm gonna hand it to you.
Well, thank you, everybody. My name is Brian Horton. I'm the CEO of Breadcrumb Cybersecurity. We help companies in three ways. We are hired to see if we can hack in, so companies want to know if they can be breached. We help organizations throughout the U.S., Europe, and Northern Africa. Um, if you have been a victim of breach, we can come in and help with that as well. So we are brought in from very large organizations to very small organizations. We work with Department of Homeland locally. So we do help local organizations quite often. If we all understood clearly the amount of even local organizations that are victims of a breach each day, it would be staggering. And we work with quite a few of them. And then third is we do monitoring. So we work with organizations that want to know if they are being breached. So we monitor those threat analytics with our threat team. So we don't do the normal help desk stuff. But we do more specifically on the trying to either see if you can be breached, if you are being breached, or if you want us to make sure that you can't be breached. So those are the ways that we can help.
Hello, everyone. My name is Corey Schumann. I work for Bitwise Industries here in Fresno, California. Bitwise is basically a social impact software development company, and specifically, I work for Shift 3 Technologies, which is a division of Bitwise, and that's our software and application development division. So, kind of the ways we can help. For one, we do software development, and we're very conscientious about security in the way we build our software, the way we deploy and manage servers. Um, I would say the vast majority of our clients we work with are small businesses, either businesses who already have software but need someone else to take over maintaining it. It could be existing businesses that have processes that they want to automate and build software around. And it can be brand new businesses who are wanting to build an application that is the software is the core of the business. Also, another division of Bitwise is our Geekwise Academy, which is a technology education branch. We teach basically series of 6-week courses at a sort of very cheap rates, just to introduce anyone who's interested, just to learn how to build web apps, mobile apps. And it can be any age, any background, like absolutely accept everyone. Um, so, like, if you're looking to hire and recruit software developers, Geekwise is one area you can look. Or if you already have a software team and you want to sort of plus up their skill set, we can craft and cater specific classes to the needs for businesses. And one of the courses that I've taught personally is a application security class, just talking about how to build apps that are secure and are conscientious of the types of attacks that Adam was telling us about today.
Um, well, for some reason, I guess they knew I had a mic on my ear, so there was really no switch on this. I don't know how. But first of all, it was Great seeing you. I felt that her face looks familiar, and I, suddenly going through her profile and history found that she's been featured as the woman tech on the channel solutions, which is like an IT magazine that I have stacked at home all over. And she's been there for 5 years, so I guess that's probably where I'm glad I met her in person. Just to get an understanding, learn more about you guys. What got you into security, and what's kind of what personally got you interested in this space?
Um, well, security. Hello.
Yeah.
So it's there's two part of it. One part is security is so important for a lot of just because technology is being used now in our daily life, and especially a lot of small business, mid-sized businesses that are our client that we support. There's so much technology that they have to deal with, and that's where we come in, is to come help them. And so we're very passionate in our office in helping small businesses with a lot of the resources that we have to help them, right? So they can just focus on their business. Um, a second part is it's actually from the techie part. It's problem solving, right? It's like troubleshooting and detective work on finding out what's going on and all of that. So that's what got me into security. I've always been in security because I built operating system when I was working at IBM, Sun Microsystem. I was part of the team for the Solaris OS, Java in the early day of Java. So we always have to pay attention to the code that we write with security in mind. So.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, just a massive kudos on the amount of development groups you've been involved in. I mean, just history is just outstanding. Brian, I think we haven't met in person before, but we kind of bumped into each other in a few events, and I'm glad to see you in person here. What's your passion personally around security, and kind of what got you into this space? And you kind of, especially coming from an IT background, and you probably ditched IT and jumped into security. Seems like a few years ago.
Sure. No, that's a great question. I think the first, when I owned a technology firm, which I haven't for 6 years, I sold, we had a help desk firm. So we saw
Closer.
firsthand the impact of ransomware, of viruses threats. We saw how much money organizations were spending in the millions, and they were still being breached, right? So there does come a point where we believe that you just can't spend enough. You can't do enough things to stop everything. So when coming back into the market in 2015, it was a passion of ours to start a cyber firm. One, because it's here in the Valley, there's not a lot of support that we know of, people that can specialize in this, right? So that's the first goal that we wanted to accomplish. Second was we wanted to take more of the detection route. So we see help desk firms, primarily their role is preventing a breach and helping you recover. But we see our role as more as, well, if we could help you detect when you are breached, then your losses will be substantially less. Because let's face it, most companies that are in the news aren't in the news because they were breached. They're in the news because they were breached for 6 months and they had no idea. So when we work with organizations, our goal is to help them understand that because you're breached, the game is not lost. Because something happened, you don't have to throw your hands in the air, but there are tools and processes that you can put in place. We can help you understand those things. So we can help you understand when you are breached. And if you can stop it, then you're still ahead of the game, and your losses are substantially less. So that's what we see as our role, and that's what we would want to help with. So.
Yeah, definitely over and over again, no matter how big the organization is, everybody hears about from somebody else. I mean, it's just, unfortunately. Corey, I'm pretty interested. It's amazing that your organization has been training. Over 50% of your students are actually women and minorities. I think that's pretty awesome, especially in the tech field. It's been lagging quite a bit. Um, Tell us what's your passion around security as well, especially with your involvement in robotics and automation, and especially having being a head of software engineering over there. It's just so much burden on you guys, where most of attacks are starting from a vulnerability in a software.
Sure. First, I just wanted to mention on that point you made about sort of the diversity in our students, and as well as in the hiring we do. That's a critical thing for us. Is we want the diversity within the company and really within our tech industry locally to match the diversity of the community that we're in. So yeah, that's one of our main priorities. As far as my own sort of how I got into security, similar to you, like we talked a lot about hackers, and that word has a very bad, like negative connotation, but um, it doesn't have to. Like it originally meant, it's tinkering, right? It's understanding how things work. If you work on your own car and you reverse engineering things, that is hacking as well. Um, so in the same way you were pulling apart Trojans, understanding how those worked, I wanted to understand how does a SQL injection attack work? How do I do cross-site scripting? All these different things that are the vulnerabilities in your web apps, your mobile apps. Um, by understanding how they work and how those attacks are executed, it's much easier to then understand how to defend against them, how to write code that doesn't have those vulnerabilities. Um, and just as sort of the guy who likes to talk about security, people started to ask me questions. And if you answer enough questions about something, suddenly you're the expert, right? People go to you and trust you. So as that, I became more and more the resource, I wanted to make sure um, that was a priority as part of what we're doing at Bitwise, to make sure we're building software that's going to protect our clients, companies that we're representing. Yeah, so I started teaching the security class, started helping build our own security policies within the company. Yeah, and that's kind of how we got to where we're at today.
Awesome. Thanks, Corey. Definitely. I mean, as you said, kind of having your culture matching the actual living being and the actual, geography that we're in is important. And breaches are not getting any better. So if we're still thinking the same way, we're still going to be at the same place. So definitely bringing in more people and different, diversity of different brains into the mix is really great. Um, so, Meijin, you're more of an IT company, but have heavy security passion inside. Um, what do you think you can do differently, or what can you help businesses do to secure themselves from an IT perspective? What what is what needs to change in companies' daily practices around technology?
Okay. Yes. We are the this is an interesting topic because a lot of time when companies, especially small, medium-sized businesses, when they hear about cybersecurity, they think IT, right? But it's cybersecurity, like Brian said, is a lot more than just IT, right? So as a traditional IT company that support the small businesses, we really are adding a lot more now on the technology to make sure that security is at the core of it, right? It's not just about implementing one time, antivirus or anti-spam or all those technology that you know of, but it's ongoing monitoring, like Brian says. And, you want to detect early on before when you immediately see something suspicious so that we can remediate it. Um, so that's what we do now on a day-to-day basis. Uh, your example of encrypting laptop, we actually have a case study on that, where a use case for that, where one of our client, their employee lost a laptop laying out in their car, so the car got broken into, and they held a contract with the county that held hundreds and thousands of records. So the fact that they're not encrypted, they had to report and do a huge damage control, and lost that contract, which is multi-million-dollar contract. So we've been very passionate about helping our clients or small businesses that are holding contracts with larger corporation or government. Um, there's a new law coming out 2017. If you are holding a federal contract, it's the NIST SP 800-171. If you are holding any of the control unclassified information in your project, you have to be compliant to that. And a big part of that is IT security. So we would help our clients go through the whole assessment and find out the gap, implement the gaps, and then ongoing monitoring of all these things so that they can continue to be as close to complying to that particular publication that they have to. And we do the same in the HIPAA world as well for healthcare, where our healthcare client has to be HIPAA compliant. So in addition to IT, there's a lot of security. We call it multi-layer security strategy in all aspects to try to put, in addition to technology, monitoring, good practices, awareness. I think it's all of that. Awareness, training to your employee. So I think it's not one thing, it's a combination of portfolio to help.
Thank you. Brian, what do you see as a small business on both sides? That sometimes they're doing, they're just kind of techie guy that is doing their day-to-day IT stuff, or companies that are working with IT providers. Where do you see yourself helping, and what is the next step for them to improve their cybersecurity maturity level there?
Sure, that's a great question. Most smaller companies, they have either the friend of the brother of the owner helping with their IT, right? So that's not unusual, and that's not a bad thing. But the reality is, the sophistication of the attacks that are happening are not only reserved for large organizations. They absolutely hit smaller organizations as well. So we encourage all of our clients who would classify that we would classify as a small business to consider hiring an outsourced firm that has the expertise that's required now to get the underlying requirements in place to stop a breach. It's becoming, I would say, if you are in the contract space, if you are in the compliance space, if you're HIPAA, FERPA, if you have to be compliant with NIST or ISO or whatnot, those can be very complex things that can be easily misunderstood. Just having some expertise, you'll pay a lot less up front than you would if you're breached or you're found to be out of compliance. And then, on the one other thing that I think I'm answering your
Yeah, no,
question here. One of the other thing that we tell our smaller companies, just because you're a small business, and if you have compliance requirements, when the auditors come around, it's not that that you have a pass. A lot of times we work with smaller organizations that have pretty massive requirements, and they just assume, hey, we're just a small shop. It's okay. We can just fly under the radar here, and that's absolutely not the case. We have worked with numerous companies under 20 employees that either have been breached or they found to be out of compliance, and the fines can be quite massive. So just keep that in mind as you prioritize where you want to spend money and maybe some more expertise. Especially now, we live in California, so January 1st of 2020, there's the California Consumer Privacy Act, and that's going to impact a lot of organizations, probably a lot of us in here as well. So more of those compliance requirements are coming.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's unfortunately the state of age is not really a matter of when you get hit. It's really, if you get hit. It's really of when you get hit. When is it your turn? And it comes a lot of times that it's too late when you're already in a breach once or twice to take action. If you're losing your clients, you're losing your contracts. You really don't have any rules to play. Corey, what do you see on the software space that is working in the small businesses? What can small businesses do to evaluate vendors? Most of them don't have the expertise, or what is kind of red flags you would expect when they're looking into a software solution?
So interestingly, and I have a feeling my fellow panelists will kind of agree, all of the sort of low-hanging fruit and more likely areas to have a vulnerability really don't start in the software. It starts in sort of the policies and practices of the employees in the organizations. Before I worked for Bitwise, I did a lot of consulting, and the first things I would see would be like bad password policies, where employees are using the same username and same password to log into the business software that has access to all of their information, their client's information, and yeah, that username was just like first name, last name, or first initial, last name. So as soon as they interface with the public through email or whatever, someone can assume like, okay, I know what your name is. Let me just throw this into this web page. Oh, cool, I'm in your software now because of the bad password. Or you showed the sticky note with the password on it, things like that. Honestly, it all starts there because you can have the most secure piece of software that was ever designed and built, but if you leave the keys in the ignition, someone can still steal your car, right? So it's got to start with the education, the awareness, and just having good practices in place.
Thanks, Corey. So we as small businesses are in much more quantity than the big guys. What do you see, Meijian, that you can do or the small businesses can do to try to improve the posture of their employees? And the question is not generally within the organization as a whole, but what kind of awareness can small businesses help their employees to understand? Somebody taking his laptop at home and his router has a default password on it. What is your take on that?
I think that comes to what we do a lot is helping the company with their company policy on whether they allow laptop to be taken out of the office or not. If it does, then it has to be encrypted. We don't do put sticky uh, on the desktop, and we laugh, but it still happens, and we still see it every day, and it's just like, I'm pulling my hair out when I see that, and I go over and take over a server, and the admin password is admin. It's like, oh my God, it still happen. Um, so it doesn't it's not hard for the hacker to hack if we keep doing that, right? The small business have to mature. If the business matter is important, then the security of the building, security of your technology are the same importance. So you don't want to leave your door open in your office. You also don't want to leave the door open in your technology and asset as well. um, so we can put as much technology as we can, but just one click by your employee is gonna let everything back in and take over. And we've rescued a lot of ransomware situation, a lot of virus situation. So a lot of it is just continuous. In part of the onboarding of new employee, it should be on your onboarding process and procedure to make sure security is important. Ongoing, workshop. We do lunch and learn at our client. Lunch and learn just security awareness because it needs to be reminded on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, I mean, awesome. Especially if any device that you can Google the model number and just the word default password after that. If Google knows that, hackers do too. Um, Brian, what do you see you can do or we can do as an industry to have business owners educate their employees? I mean, not for the sake of the business only, but for the sake of the internet as a whole. If we have all these vulnerable devices with default passwords, we're just being in a much higher risk than we were in 2016 when the East Coast was paralyzed.
Um,
Sorry, it's not supposed to be a tricky question.
no, no, not a trick question. I mean, we're asked that a lot, and we're happy. There's so much information out there. And if you're running an organization, if you're a small business, your day is already full. So how do you manage to take a day or a week, a month, a year that's already packed? You're already trying to keep the wheels on the car, and then absorb all this other information and then make sense of it and then train your staff on it when their day is already full, right? So that's what we walk into each day is how do we clearly communicate to owners of what their risks are. And actually that's why we do ethical hacking. So when we are brought in by the owner of an organization, they ask us, hey, we haven't told anybody else that we've hired you. We want you to see if you can breach. It's that tangible output that we take back and we work with the staff because staff, at the same time, they have to make each day as they're told information, they have to prioritize things on what they think is important and not important. But when we can sit with them and say, hey, here's how we breached last month. Here's who clicked. Here's who gave us their name and password. Here's all of the default names and passwords. It's instantly a learning moment. They're like, I've been told this, I just didn't think it would happen here. That's often what we hear. And then it's that type of information that can catalyze even a small organization to start making the right choices, get their staff on board and get the staff buy-in. Because let's face it, in the news for the past 3 years, all we hear is breaches and hacks and Russia and China and this and that. And there's just so much information. And after a while, it just becomes noise. You don't really pay attention to it anymore. But when you can make it real in your organization and then they can quantify, like, wow, this just happened to us. So-and-so clicked, this data was stolen. They're like, it immediately makes staff and management start to reprioritize how they address or how they want to handle their workday. So that's one of the main things that we've seen help organizations is making it real for what they're doing. So.
Awesome, awesome. Thanks, Brian. And just a little note on that, basically, there is an industry expert that I was talking to. He's been doing ethical hacking for over a decade. And all along, small and huge enterprises, their success rate of going in is 100%. Any business that asks them if they can hack into their business and take over their network, their success rate is 100%. So that just tells you how many businesses need to learn and understand what their boundaries are and what their, how well they can be penetrated. or easy, unfortunately. Corey, again, you got a lot of responsibilities under your hand there. How do you motivate your developers? How do you motivate your staff into taking security seriously, where they're just swamped with lines and lines and lines of code there?
I actually think Brian's suggestion of sort of making it real is an important thing also for the developers. Because it's the same thing. Like if you're a green developer, you're just starting to learn how to build various pieces of software, how to solve these problems. You've heard, cybersecurity is important, but until you've seen it or been on the receiving end of a vulnerability, it doesn't click, right? And so yeah, we especially when I'm teaching the class, we will actually do like red hat, blue hat type thing. So we'll have a team who's responsible to build secure software and a team who then is responsible to try and breach that software, and then they'll switch off. So it's getting that hands-on experience, because part of it is just pattern recognition. When you're writing software, I'm to the point where I can look at something and immediately think like, that's vulnerable. I could crack that in these 3 ways. So getting the rest of my team to that point where they'll see like, oh, this is a bad practice. This is vulnerable in a variety of ways. I need to change that, or I need to not write code that way anymore. And that's the goal.
Awesome. We've been taking a lot of your time. I mean, can we probably go into a little bit of questions, and if we have time left, we can move forward. I don't know how this mic opens, but it doesn't have a switch. Yeah, probably one of these. Any questions, guys, here? Start with actually, also the camera, they need the voice. Probably microphone would be better, yeah.
How's that? Everybody hear me? Yeah, I was wondering about a model that would apply towards tribes here in California. Some tribes, they employ thousands of employees, and they also do online lending, where there's a ton of personal information, financial records. We're also getting into online gaming, gambling, sports betting. So as tribes, for example, they may not hack the tribe itself, but they hack the workers. Sent out emails saying, "Oh, hey, we got an email saying we changed your account," and the person's like, "Hey, I didn't get paid. What's going on?" Well, somebody hacked in and they got all the workers' email to the fiscal department, and the fiscal department's like, "Okay, I'm getting emails of changing these bank accounts," and then they sent an email back to the workers, and the workers' emails got diverted back to the ghost site or whatever. So, on a tribal standpoint, where tribes are endeavoring into businesses that are dealing in multi-million-dollar ventures, what would be a good platform or data, I guess, protection that we can help promote? Because we're out there helping promote them businesses, finding them funding, contracts. This is an important additive to those. Like, okay, I give you the funding, the wherewithal to go out and start a multi-million-dollar business, and then 2 months later you're hacked, and something happens and it might crush it. Or they're currently working on it now to where they're doing the businesses, they have online lending, they have a casino, they're employing, 3 to 4 to 5,000 people, and all those workers get hacked. So my thing is, what kind of platform, software, or even just a protocol that we could assist them with? So if they go out and we find them funding for a new casino relocation, they get it all up and stuff. Well, here, to protect your workers' information, your high rollers, I see you had a slide on that where high rollers' information got stolen. Well, that's only a little part of it. You got the workers, you got everything else going on, the vendors, and yeah, they hacked the high rollers thing, but I don't hear of them. Who else was affected by that? Just the high rollers? Okay, that's only a small portion, but there's a number of mainstream businesses that are associated with tribes to where I don't think they're protected as strongly as they need to be when they're dealing in multi-million-dollar ventures, and ensuring that those businesses are successful. So what I just want to kind of know about what your thoughts are on. It seems like everyone you guys up there have a spot in this cyber protection, right? You're doing something, you're doing something. It's not like you're overlapping. One's writing software, you're doing development and training. So it seems like you got that whole spectrum up there. What kind of a model can we or can a tribe develop to secure their online lending, to secure their casino workers, secure all that information that is happening on a daily basis throughout California? And California has, 52, 54 something major gambling establishments. And then also they have online lending, which are, multi-million dollar books. So those are something that we have come across going out and promoting the minority business development. Is like, hey, okay, yeah, that's great. You guys, we found you funding, we got you access, but how are you protecting all that? And then also that state laws do not apply on reservations. So the 2020 law that you guys are talking about, that does not apply on tribal reservation sovereign lands. So what steps, what kind of model, what kind of, I guess, marketing can we bring to these tribes as a tool to protect their multi-million dollar ventures?
Just a quick question here before we answer you, if you don't mind. You were talking about tribes. Sorry for my literacy in that area, but basically, are you talking about, a group of members of the tribe that kind of form an organization that help the rest of the, the hes or to
It's
help the
it's
rest?
a government. It's a federally recognized government. So basically, the tribe, a tribal entity, is the only governing body, right? So they oversee lands, they oversee projects. What do you call that?
Yeah.
Service projects. What else?
So it's kind of like a government. So basically, you guys are the entity that are helping those businesses develop and move and expand and.
Yes, find funding,
Yeah.
venture capitalists, marry them with grants, marry them with whatever they apply for, because they're all hub zone, they're all minority, they all qualify for the funding that's out there through a number of different federal agencies, state agencies, and then also on top of that, they have their economic development ventures that are in the multi-millions of dollars. And I don't
Thanks.
see them actually applying cybersecurity to any of their projects, let alone providing training for somebody. If you do implement that program, then where is your training to somebody that could actually maintain those that structure? I should say.
Thank you. I'll just leave a comment, a quick note on that area of, just the ways the structure is in general. My opinion is to focus heavily on you guys internally. You guys are running the show. You have a little bit of influence, but you are supporting those businesses. So if only one of one, just depending on the quantity you're dealing with, if you have one or two people that at least understand the National Institute of National Institute of Standards and Technology, you could probably Google NIST cybersecurity, so forth, a framework. And if you guys understand the structure behind what are the things that they need to look into, and build that as part of the process, that you have an entity that is looking for funding, they want to build a project. If you implement that as part of it, as these are the things you're doing, based on the experience that you have locally, you can advise them on what the things they need to take care of, at least as a broad vision of what are the things that they need to look into. Because if you're going to tell them you need to take care of cybersecurity, it's that they don't even know where to start. But at least NIST standards is really long, but at least 100 there's 100 of the most important pieces of it, where if you're evaluating these entities or these businesses as part of the NIST standard, because the government has spent a lot of money on it, and the private sector is helping in those, it's a public-private partnership. So those do apply on any type of transactions, any type of business worldwide. In my opinion, is that could be a starting point, and then from there you can try to develop these practices for people to share, but at least point them to the right direction. as part of your, lending process, helping their business, but, at least to tell them kind of what to do. Would like to weigh in?
Yeah. Oh, you, I think you're right. The combination of experience up here can really help because we don't overlap a lot. There's so many aspects of technology you need to also consider. Um, you can, nothing else, you can also adopt the standards that's out there. He talked about NIST framework, cybersecurity framework, which is where a lot of industry sector is based on. Federal government, like I said, has publication on NIST SP 800-171, where any contractors that would be holding any just document to do their job has to comply to, and there's like hundreds of questionnaire that we've automated to help go through and assess, right? And so you can kind of make some of this as a maybe basic requirement of these different groups that have to comply to, right? And we can help with that. We can help you figure out what makes sense. Um, and then it becomes something that, before an RFP, even now federal RFP, you have to actually have a check mark on that um, before you can even bid for the project, or at least in the process of trying to be compliant to that. Um, so I think it definitely is something that needs to be part of the whole process when they're building this, uh, um, more and more of their businesses.
Yeah, I mean, going back to your specific question, what's a thing or one thing? Well, there really isn't. I mean, to be honest, there isn't one specific thing that you can do, but aligning with a standard is the absolute place where you should start. So the NIST standard is widely adopted here in California. I think the Attorney General for the state adopted the top CIS 20 controls, which in my opinion is a lot easier to work with. It's just more meaningful to look at as you're trying. So what these are just communicated standards in writing that you can start to hand off to people in their roles so they can start to align them with their job function. But what I wanted to go back on was your point with the high rollers got breached through the tank, right? So, I mean, that was probably the absolute last thing on their list to ever look at is their
Is the
tank
tank.
secure on wireless, right? So that just goes to say you can spend an inordinate amount of money on protecting your data, but have something like that happen. But what the NIST controls do, it takes into account things like that.
Yeah.
So it gives everybody in their role something meaningful to think through. But aligning with a standard is the first place to start. And that gets baked into your procurement, all of your contractors, those who manage the organization, all the way down to the guy who installs the Wi-Fi tank filter for the fish, right? So it's like it'll touch every role within the organization. So.
I would just add, given sort of the scope and scale of everything you're talking about, it's everything that the tribal entities managing themselves, their employees, plus all the programs underneath those. I would probably recommend, like if it's within the budget, to have someone whose full-time job is dedicated just to finding and defining the policies and then enforcing those and making sure that from top down that everything's being followed. Looking for little things like um, is like those emails going around. If there was a policy in place on how that should be responded to, or who finance can send that type of information for, that might have been caught at that point. I think trying to just apply ad hoc would be difficult. I think having someone or even a third party to drive those would probably help a lot, just because you're talking about so many employees and levels of organization.
Any other questions?
Yeah, and just a last push for that is you guys have so much advantage comparing to the bureaucracies we have in the state and the country and all the cities around. you definitely have the opportunity and the lay ground to be able to enforce something that has proven to be working. So make use of it.
Yeah, I have a sort of a personal question that maybe it will help businesses through my question. I'm one of the federal employees of the thousands that had their information hacked. I'm sure you heard about it a few years ago. And so as a result of that, I've had, some other monitoring agencies that were out there. But I get notifications that my personal email is now on the dark web. And then I also get some kind of emails where they've kind of got part of my password figured out. So, from my personal experience through a business aspect, what sort of steps would you take once you are in that sort of situation that you would advise someone to do?
Great question, which is actually something that everybody on planet Earth is facing. Um, any one of us, regardless of um, where we are, as long as we use technology in the past decade, would have a password somewhere out there. There's nothing you can do about it. What's already out, but what can you do is rephrase everything. Stop using anything that has any variety that is close to that. Um, in the cybersecurity industry, of course, we suggest using long passwords and using multi-factor authentication to send you a text message and so forth. It's really around awareness, but the first step you can do is, um, you know, knowing that there are so many breaches in the past 10 years. Um, at least don't use anything related to it. And make sure anything you log into, if it has a functionality to send you a text message, do it. It's not a bulletproof, but it's better than nothing. You have a lot of environments. You can use something, without promotion, but something like LastPass, for example. You can have very complex passwords for different systems. So in case um, Google gets hacked next, and they have your password, that would only work on Google. But you don't have to remember all those complex passwords because you're only logging into one portal, which is like a password manager, and that has your passwords in it. So it's really being just precaution. And there's nothing you can do about the past, but all you can do is just try to improve yourself in the future.
I
That's my
just
take.
add to that. One of the things that we do as an organization is when I said on the unethical hacking, but we can very often reset somebody's email password because it asks for the street that you grew up on, your mother's maiden name, the name of your pet. Where are all those things at? They're on Instagram, they're on Facebook. So we just literally go on those sites and we're like, oh, well, there's the name of your pet. There's your mother's maiden name because that was how we can sort through all that pretty rapidly and quite often reset those accounts. So having something like multi-factor, I'm not sure if you guys know what that is, but when you log into your bank or to Instagram or Facebook, things like that, where after you type in a valid name and password, then it sends a code to your phone. Having things like that turned on wherever possible stops things like that from happening. Even if your password is leaked out there on the dark web, which does happen quite often, if multi-factor is turned on, it will stop those things from happening. And just personally, we change in our organization all of our passwords every 6 months, just as a standard practice. We always assume that breach is about to happen because it most likely is. So being more proactive on it, I think, is good instead of waiting to find out when you're breached and seeing something come up in your email. Regularly updating those as well with something like LastPass. LastPass is a free tool, I think, for an individual where you can manage all of your passwords in one spot. Because why we don't use complex passwords is because we don't remember them. So that's why they're put on a note. That's why that's all the same password. That's why those things happen. So something like LastPass can help you with that type of a habit and make everything very complex, but at the same time simple as well. So.
Good, thank you. I think we come to the end of this part of it. Very, very informative information for our small business. Let's give them a hand.